Number 18. You flip a fair coin 3 times. What is the probability of flipping at least 2 heads? Well, there's multiple ways we can do this problem. One, through just listing out what are the possible outcomes of flipping a coin 3 times. Or we can build a table to show all the outcomes of flipping a coin 3 times. Or we can do a tree diagram. Now I'm going to start with the tree diagram. So on my first toss, we can result in either heads or tails. So the first time I toss that coin, it could either land on heads or tails. Now the second time I go to toss the coin, well, say I landed on heads the first time. The second time, it can land on heads or it can land on tails. At the same time, what if we landed on tails the first flip? Well, the second flip could either land on heads or tails. Finally, we're going to flip it a third time. So, if we landed on heads the first time, heads the second time, the third time could be either heads or tails. Well, or we could have heads the first time, tails the second time, and heads or tails the third time. Finally, what if we landed on tails the first time? You can have tails the first time, heads the second time, and heads or tails the third time. Or we can have tails the first time, tails the second time, and heads or tails the third. Now, tree diagrams are not always the easiest to understand. So let's list it out what that would look like in list form. So the first outcome possible could be heads the first time, heads the second time, and heads the third time. Or we can have heads the first time, heads the second time, and tails the third time. Next, it can be heads the first time, let me draw that one, tails the second time, and heads the third. Or you can do heads the first time, tails the second time, and heads the third, tails the third time. Alright, let's do the other outcome of what if we landed on tails first. Well, it could be tails the first time, heads the second time, and heads the third time. Or it can be tails the first time, heads the second time, and tails the third time. My seventh option is tails the first time, tails the second time, and heads the third time. And the final option is tails the first time, tails the second time, and tails the third time. So as you can see, we have 8, because we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 options or 8 different outcomes when flipping a coin 3 times. And we're looking for the ones that have at least heads 2 of the times. So let's circle the ones that have at least heads 2 of the times. Well, we got this first one, and the second one, and the third one, because it's heads, tails, tails. Heads, tails, heads. Now the fourth one doesn't count because it's heads, tails, tails. So that one's not working. The fifth one is tails, heads, heads. So yes, that's at least 2. The sixth is tails, heads, tails. That doesn't work. Seventh is tails, tails, heads. That doesn't work. And the eighth one is tails, tails, tails. So to find the probability of flipping at least 2 heads, we're going to put the number of times we see it, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, because we counted the number we circled, 4 out of a total of 8. And probability has to be in simplest form, so let's divide it out to simplify, and we can divide by 4, which results in 4 divided by 4 is 1, 8 divided by 4 is 2, a probability of 1/2.